All right, today we're going to make for you a blueberry pie. First of all, we have 4 cups of frozen blueberries. These are blueberries we actually picked ourselves, but you can use some from the store or anything else. I know you want to make a boysenberry pie, so I would say it's probably about the same amount of berries. There might be 1 more cup of berries in it because they're so small. So what we do is we are going to add to this 3/4 cup of sugar to 1 cup of sugar because it can be kind of tart. And then I do tapioca. So we only put in 1/4 cup of tapioca. Then we put in just a little shot of lemon, okay? Little shot of lemon juice. Now we're gonna mix this up. Mix it all together, Emily. I have a really big helper here today wanting to help me. She loves to bake with Mommy. So the reason why we do this first is to let the berries start to get a little bit softer by the time we get done doing our crust. Okay, thank you, Emily. That was a very good help. Now we're gonna set this over to the side. Okay, now we're going to make our crust. And this actually is 1 cup of flour. Then to the 1 cup of flour we add 3/4 cup of shortening and just a pinch of salt. So I just take my shaker and I shake a little salt in there. That's about all you need. Now first of all is what you do is I use a fork. Some people have what you call one of those pastry blenders. I personally do not use a pastry blender because I find a fork just as quick and as easy. Now this recipe will do the bottom and the top for your crust. And some people actually use just the recipe I'm doing right now to make just 1 crust, meaning the top or the bottom. That makes an extra thick, thick, thick crust, which is okay if you like that. What I do is, I don't really like it when it's really so thick that it seems like all you're eating is crust. So I have found that with my family, this works out the best for me. So once it is all blended in, just like this, it's all been blended in, then this is when we start to add the water. Now, if you prefer to add the water 1 tablespoon at a time, I have gotten to the point where I just dump, okay? So here we have 1, we have 2, and we have 3 tablespoons. Mix it together. Okay, see, look at this. It's really clumpy still. It's not sticking together. So we still know that, hey, we need a little bit more. So we'll add 1 more tablespoon of water. Okay? Thank you, Emily. Mommy will do this part because it's a little tricky. Okay? Now see, I added that. It's still not sticking together. The very important thing about the crust is making sure it's the right consistency. So then instead of adding a full tablespoon, I'm just going to do maybe a half, okay? Because if you add way too much water, then you don't have a good crust either. Now see, that half a tablespoon was about just the perfect consistency for the crust. Now I can feel it, and the feel should never be too dry or too sticky. It should feel just kind of like Play-Doh, okay? So this actually makes this is a really good consistency right here. And if you also use warm water, that also helps in the crust. It makes things a little better. So here we go. I put the crust in half, and then I form it into a nice round circle like this. And if I didn't mention, we're doing a 9-inch pie. Okay, first of all, we just spread some on the countertop, and my countertop is kind of like, you know, I recommend that you do it on a nice surface. It makes rolling out so much easier. So I roll it out like that. Then I pick it up, push a little more flour underneath of it, then we roll it out some more. I know, I have so many helpers right now, they're crying because they can't help mommy, and they don't understand why. And sometimes it's not always perfect in a round circle, but I do try. They have these nice little guides that you can use, but so you want to make sure that it's big enough to fit into your pan. Okay, I can tell you right now that's big enough. So I bring this over here like this, pick it up. Now it has a little extra flour on the back, so you just wipe that out. Put it into the pie tin like this. Put it over the crust just like that. Now, I have never really had a good success with butter crusts because they're even harder to deal with. So then is what we do is we just dump in our mixed up blueberries. Emily, thank you. Oh, I always have the little extra help, which is great. Put it in there. Now we need to do the top crust. And actually on this, another thing my mom always does is she actually dots her pies with butter. I'm not exactly 100% sure why, but it has something to do with it. And it always causes them to be perfect. So here we go. I'm going to dot the butter on top. No, Emily, please don't touch it. So you just put a few dots of butter on top. Now we're going to set that aside and we got to roll out some more dough. Again, I do this exact same thing. And when your rolling pin starts sticking to it, you know you got to flip it over. Otherwise, if you don't have enough flour, what happens is that thing can stick to the whole entire countertop, and then, well, you can't get it up. You have problems with it getting up. So you just want to make sure that you rolled it out really nice and big. Sometimes I do a lattice crust, but for sake of time tonight, I don't think I'm going to do a lattice. Lattice always takes up so much more time. Okay, so that's ready for the crust. Put the crust right on top like that. Fold it over. Now look at this, it's all ready. You just pinch the top around, you bring it around, keep pinching it together. Just rolling the bottom to come to the top. Now this section has a lot of crust, so I put that in a section that doesn't have a lot of crust, so that it makes it kind of more uniform around your whole entire pie. And by the way, I cook this at 350 for about an hour. You can actually see when the top of the crust is getting brown. Now, one last step that we actually have to do is then you just put your thumb in between your fingers like this and you pinch the crust. That makes that perfect little pinch. Everybody loves my crust. They think they're flaky, and they also taste like butter because there's one last thing I do. Now I will cut slits in the top of that crust. Sometimes you can just use a fork, but the fork really doesn't work as well. If you cut slits, you're sure that the crust isn't going to go poo like this and stay high. and then not go back down on your crust, okay? Or down on your fruit. You kind of want your pie to stay where it's at. Okay, now is what we're going to do is we're going to take some butter. You know, I take about this much. Put it in a little measuring cup, and I just put that in the microwave for 25 seconds just to melt it. Okay, so now we have our melted butter, and let me do the edges and then you can do the other part. So then what I do is I just really get this wet, and I just clump. You see how I'm clumping that on the crust there? It has a nice buttery edge there. Very nice. So you kind of blot it on the edge of the crust there. Blot it on the crust. And sometimes your crust, I think we did 4.5 tablespoons. You might have to do 5 tablespoons. All right, Emily, I told you you could finish it, so do the rest on the top, all on the top. And if you have little helpers, they can help you on this last thing. It is fun brushing on the top butter. And you know, if you fail the first time, keep trying. It's all about feeling the consistency of the dough. You don't want it too dry, and you don't want it so soupy and goopy that you can't even start out. You want it in between. You want it not dry, but nice and soft like Play-Doh. If you get out a fresh thing of Play-Doh and you feel it, it doesn't stick to your fingers. It's nice and soft. That's really what you want your, let me finish. It's really what you want your pie crust to resemble. Okay, then I just take this is my sugar shaker, and I like an extra little bit sugar around the edges. So I do that, and then I just sugar the top. Now our family likes a little bit of cinnamon on top of that, so that's how I do my fruit pies. Not everybody likes cinnamon, but so if you don't want it, you can omit it. So I just do a little cinnamon on top, and guess what? It is done. Ready to go in the oven. It bakes for about an hour. I'll tell you a little secret. If the little center right here looks a little tiny bit doughy yet, after an hour, that means it still needs to be cooking. If you don't see bubbling of the fruit around the edges, chances are it needs to stay in the oven for a little longer. But generally speaking, an hour is what you need. So in an hour, you'll have a nice hot pie and, ooh, a husband to please. Hope you enjoy.